Thank you for joining us for Miles' presentation, TurboCharge Sales Lead Generation and Recruitment with Digital Marketing. The program will begin momentarily. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this virtual presentation. The program will begin shortly. Just a reminder that your video and audio will remain off throughout the discussion. Please submit your questions at any time during the program by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Melinda with Imaginasium will be reviewing and compiling your questions and presenting them to Miles at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to use the chat feature to communicate with the panelists and other attendees. At this time, I would like to introduce Miles Smith of Imaginasium for his presentation, TurboCharge Sales Lead Generation and Recruitment with Digital Marketing, presented by Imaginasium.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that warm introduction, and we're glad to be here with you today at this exciting conference. Definitely excited to talk this through and also tailor this to our audience here. We're going to be asking a few questions throughout the presentation, some polls just to get some immediate information and use that to do the presentation and also our Q&A at the end. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. As Jenny said, we're going to talk about lead generation today, and that applies both in a sales context and also in an HR context. So we have an opportunity to reach out to people and use digital marketing to very finely target those audiences and speak directly to them using various digital marketing channels. We're going to get started with our first poll here. So we'll put that up and just want you to weigh in on what type of role that you have. Again, we want to use this information to guide our presentation here and talk specifically to the people that are on this presentation.
All right, so we're about 75% of the way of people have voted, so we'll close it in a couple seconds here. Thanks for weighing in, everybody.
All right, so it looks like sales and business development is at the top of the list in terms of percentage at 35%. Then we've got marketing and owner leadership is a close second. Then we've got sales and marketing and HR follow on after that. So obviously everybody wants to generate qualified leads and prospects, right, and use their digital marketing dollars efficiently. And a lot of that starts with using the right strategies that have been proven, tested, and true by other people who can show you case study data. I learned most of my information and about digital marketing from people who have done it and have the case study to prove it. I would say be very wary and careful of people that tell you information about digital marketing and what they've done or that's been successful or not, if they don't have the data and the ROI to prove it. All right here. So to show you how powerful digital marketing can be, we're going to lead with some of that case study data, both from an ad side. So digital ads is one way to do that. There's a lot of different channels that you can pay to get in front of an audience and run an ad, but you can also use content, and both are equally powerful. One is generally a more shorter term approach through the ads, and the content is a bit of a longer term approach. So on the right side of your screen there, we've generated for one client over $100,000 in new revenue directly from digital ads. That's only the first year. This is a client who they have such a great process that they retain those prospects year after year. And so there's follow-on orders in years 2, 3, and 4. That number doesn't even count. On the left-hand side of your screen, content, articles, yes, they can generate revenue as well. We had one client that generated a $300,000 contract just from an article that got picked up by entrepreneur.com. And that wasn't unintentionally, that was very much an intentional strategy that we did to make that happen and get on entrepreneur.com or get the client featured on entrepreneur.com. So digital marketing can and does work. It does generate an ROI. Again, it's all about the strategy and how you use it. So I want us to think for a minute over the years, and I do this periodically too, because we can get stuck in a certain mindset. But is our marketing prehistoric? Do we, like this dinosaur here, have essentially the same thing on our calendar every day to kill something and eat it? Is what we're doing markedly different? And if we're doing the same things every day and checking that box off, right? Is that getting us different results? Are we expecting something to change? We have to periodically think about this, because as technology and digital marketing specifically rapidly changes around us, we've got to make sure that we've got that new information or that different mindset that somebody else has and what success they've had. We don't want to become extinct like the dinosaurs. All right, we got another poll up here. Melinda's gonna drop that one in. Just want to know how you're currently generating your leads. And this is for sales, but certainly if you're from HR, you might answer with your recruiting needs there as well. I feel like we need some elevator music or something to kind of keep us going here while we're waiting on people to vote.
25% of the way voted. Halfway, 60%. Keep them coming. All right, we're slowing down, so we're going to go ahead and close it.
All right, so looks like the winner or the one is using email marketing automation. That is a great way to do it and to not only get those in, but nurture them. Trade shows and conferences and website form submissions would be next, and SEO, virtual trade shows and conferences. Interesting. So some people are still going to in-person events, and I know some of those are happening. A lot of them have gone virtual, but there are some that are going against the grain and still choosing to have in-person conferences. So there's certainly a variety of ways that we can do this, and we're going to touch on a number of those as we go through the presentation. All right. So let's talk about media consumption. We've known for quite a while that the trend line on digital media and just consumption in general, this is not just marketing. This is everything. Your TV, radio, whatever, that traditional media has been slowly declining. It didn't fall off a cliff. And as is pretty typical with most trends, there are some trend lines that stay pretty consistent. What you saw in 2018 is that flipped. So, and this applies in B2C as well as in B2B. We can no longer just look at B2B and say, well, that's different. That's B2B and our buyers aren't in digital media. These people they're people too, right? The buyer who makes that B2B decision, that's a person. They are in digital media, and it's up to us to find ways to connect with them where they are and speak to their pain points. And you can certainly see the acceleration of digital here over the last couple of years, and even more since COVID. And I expect that trend line to continue to rise even more sharply in the future, because we've compressed what would normally take a number of years, 5 years or so, into a very, into 5 or 6 months. And so we're seeing that acceleration trend. And again, not just in a B2C sense, but it definitely in a B2B sense as well. These effects are going to last. And that's certainly true of digital media, but across our economy, right? We will be forever changed by a post-COVID world. Things that took a lot longer to transition and change got accelerated, and not all those things are going to snap back even once we have a vaccine and we eliminate COVID. There will be other lasting effects, or potentially even other viruses in the future. So our prospects are getting used to doing even more and more online research first. Think about this statistic. Your prospects that come to your website, they come get information, your social media, they look at your competitors, and 60% of those people will never contact you. They'll never contact you. All the more important why we need to make sure that our message online resonates with our audience. What do they care about? What are their pain points? This isn't about what we care about. Now, we certainly have a company and products and services that we want to sell, but this is about them, reaching them where they are with the message that they care about, and using digital means, again, where they are, to amplify what sales is doing. This isn't about replacing our sales team. It's only about amplifying that and using those methods to make our sales team even more effective and efficient with their time. Think about all of the digital ways that we can bring people in to our website, get them on an email list, and then nurture them with email automation to the point where then the sales team only reaches out to a certain small percentage of those that are most engaged, that are showing the buying signals. So it's an opportunity, again, not to replace sales, but to amplify and utilize the best of marketing and sales. Now, I know many of us in any crisis, whether that's COVID or some other crisis that our company has been in, what is the first thing organizations want to cut? It's marketing. That's the last thing you should cut. That's like being on a sinking ship, taking your engine and throwing it overboard. Why would we do that? Probably because we don't fully understand how to utilize marketing effectively. Or maybe we just haven't connected with the right people, or that have the case study data that can show us the way. But marketing is not something we want to cut in those times of crisis. Now, we need to be strategic about it and not just spending like crazy, but think about your competitors. If they're pulling out of the market and they're not spending their marketing dollars, don't you want to be leaning into the market and spending your dollars wisely, taking market share away and positioning your company in the future so that when the economy does fully come back, you're much stronger than they are, and you're better positioned, and you've had more time to communicate to those prospects and those customers during that crisis period? We all need to be mindful of that and think about those long-term implications, not just what's happening in the short term. All right, Melinda, we've got another poll here. We're going to talk specifically about recruiting. So Those of you in sales, still, I would like you to answer if you know for your organization, even if you aren't in HR, we'd like to hear how your company, how that's changed with recruiting.
Almost halfway there. Keep them coming. Responses are slowing down. All right, we'll close it in just a couple seconds then.
All right. So the largest percentage, although this is pretty close, says the recruiting has stayed the same. It's difficult. I would say the next, all really close second place, recruiting has become more difficult, haven't needed to hire, unsure. And then 11% said recruiting is easier. And then the last stayed the same. So you can see the preponderance here is that it's become more difficult. You know, there are more opportunities. Some companies obviously lost business and they don't need workers. Other businesses are growing like crazy and they can't find enough qualified workers to get the work done because their clients have so many needs and they're growing in the middle of this pandemic. So it's a bit all over the board, but the bottom line is digital marketing, strategic digital marketing is a great opportunity to zig when your competitors are zagging, to do something different and reach out to candidates and get them to come in and experience your culture. Just like with sales, and we talk about prospects, we need to be speaking to these applicants about what's in it for them, not just what we're trying to sell, which is to fill a position, but why should they care about our company? What about the culture? Now, I want to tell a story to illustrate this point about perception and reality. Early in my career, believe it or not, I worked for Terminix. I killed bugs once upon a time, many moons ago. And in order to get that job, I had to fill out a resume. I had the email address, gfunkdaddy@hotmail.com. I know it's pretty hard to think of or to believe, but I'm the furthest thing you could possibly imagine from Snoop Dogg. But I do like the music. Now, I didn't even think about putting that on my resume. I thought it was fun. I was being interesting. I put it on there. I found out later the only reason I even got the interview had nothing to do with my resume and my qualifications. They just wanted to see what I looked like. I ended up getting the job, which I'm grateful for. But it highlights the fact that our perception, and this goes to whether you're getting people to try to apply for your jobs or learn more about your company and potentially become a prospect and a customer, what we say as a company is often different than what they perceive. And it's really important that we get in the mindset of our prospects and our applicants. What do they care about? What's important to them? It really is less about what we're trying to sell and aligning what they're looking to get with what we have. Now, we've helped a number of clients with digital marketing and recruitment. A couple of them are Bellmark and Robinson Metal. One of them, we've generated net new 400 more applicants, and the other one over 100 more. Now, these aren't all their applicants. These are what these campaigns generated beyond what they were already getting. And in one case, we far exceeded their goal for the year, three quarters of the way through the year. So you can see how powerful these strategies are in reaching out to very targeted groups of people. This isn't just spreading our message everywhere. It's talking to the demographic and the type of person that we're looking for, the skill set, all of those things, and then presenting them with a message and trying to engage them and bring them in to apply. If we do that and we sell the message of what the organization has to offer beyond just pay and benefits, but what are the intangibles, we're more likely to not only get them to get hired, but to stay and help us build our culture. Just a couple of examples visually here of ads for Robinson and Bellmark. Again, what's in it for them. not just what's in it for us as the company that's doing the hiring. We're speaking to them using visuals to speak to their pain points. What do they care about? Because the reality is, everybody's saying we got great pay and benefits. What are we going to do to stand out and stand apart and ultimately get people to stay long-term with us? We often spend 70% of our time reaching out to active candidates. Digital marketing is a great way we could use to flip that. Yeah, we got to still reach out to active candidates. We got to make job posts, but we shouldn't just rely on that when the passive candidates are a much bigger pool. And maybe we don't spend 70% of the time on passive candidates, but even if we spend 50% of our time on each of those buckets, we need to think differently. And most of the time, we end up like the dinosaur. We have our check boxes on our calendar for the week or the day, and we do those things that we know because it's comfortable. We've got to get outside of that mindset and change our thinking and do something different and unique, not just whatever we want to do strategically for sure, and based on data and information that of other things that have worked for other organizations, but we've got to do those things to break out of that mindset. Just like we've talked about recruiting, we're going to shift to talking about sales. And we've talked about using digital ads to get recruits and people to apply for a job. You can also use that method to generate leads and sales for sales, but you can use content marketing. And I know what you're thinking, Miles, we've tried content marketing, we've done that. We either don't know if it's turned into any real business for us. We're just not sure, skeptical, or maybe we haven't done content marketing. This seems like so much work and not sure if we're going to get the gain. Again, I would point back to the case study data. What did we do for that client? We got them on entrepreneur.com and a $300,000 contract from content. That wasn't from ads. That wasn't from social media. That was from content. There was a lot of work that went into that and a lot of preparation, but we did that because there was certainty behind the strategy and we know what's worked before and how we can apply that to any situation. The formula you see here is a really powerful one. If you want to generate leads consistently, month after month, year after year, the combination of strategic content and SEO, which many organizations will tell you that they know SEO, I would always ask them, let me see some of the results from your case study data from your other clients. But if you do that strategically, SEO is not easy like it once was 5 or even 10 years ago. It's very much well worth doing because it can bring a significant steady volume of leads to your website. And then you bolt on the email automation piece and nurture those people based on invaluable content that you've given them on the front end. They came in from SEO, they came in from Google search, they saw that content. Now you're offering them even more value by some sort of a lead magnet sign up email. And then you send them even more content and warm them up to the point where then sales is ready to take that handoff and they can call the ones that are that much more engaged. Now, I don't know about you, but I love Far Side comics. And this is another one. How many of us have been like these two spiders that are sitting at the edge of the slide here and they're saying to themselves, if we pull this off, we'll eat like kings? We often go after the big clients, right? We want the FANG clients, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Now, those may not be your prospects, but metaphorically speaking, we're going after the big dogs. Well, maybe that's not the best fit for our organization. Maybe they're going to, you can grow out of business, and maybe those clients aren't the best ones. Again, going back to that idea of changing our mindset and thinking strategically about who are our prospects? Where are they? What are our ideal prospects? What are the characteristics and demographics of those people? Who do we want? Who's a best fit for our organization? Because maybe they're a smaller company and that's a better fit for you. Maybe they're mid-sized, maybe they're larger. Maybe they have other different demographic characteristics that you really value and will be a better long-term fit for you and your organization in their business relationship. Some other stats from our content marketing efforts with clients. For one client, generated a 400% increase in SEO traffic. Another one, 1,300% increase in SEO traffic. As I mentioned before, one of those generated a $300,000 contract, again, directly from an article. And as I mentioned in the formula, email marketing is a key component to this consistent generation of leads through a flywheel. In that case, we more than doubled those email leads. Now, keep in mind, these are quality leads, people that came in from SEO, liked our invaluable in-depth content that we gave away for free, signed up for another piece of content, and now are getting in our nurturing series to get even more content and ultimately trying to move them towards a sale. Now, the benefit of this system isn't without a warning. We can run digital ads in the short term. I can go to the traffic store online and buy digital ads, and we can start them tomorrow, and we can try to generate leads and sales. This system that I'm describing to you here is different. It's going to take time. It's going to cost more time and resources on the front end, but over the long term, your cost per lead is going to be less. So while this takes 12, 18, sometimes even 24 months to show real significant progress, it does over those first few number of months. But the real benefit is when that hockey sticks effect happens, and we really start to see an acceleration of those leads and sales. The key important thing here is to be thinking both short-term and long-term. We've got to be building something that might take us more time in the short run, but is going to pay off down the road while we're doing some short-term strategies as well that's going to fill that sales funnel right now. Now, content marketing has a number of steps. These are kind of condensed. Optimizing existing website landing pages. So we got to look at what you have, what messages you're speaking to, so that when people come into content, that the way you're speaking about your products and services and about your company is about them, not just about your organization. Looking at business goals and priorities is really crucial. This might seem an elementary step, but it's really important to make sure that you are aligning those goals with the budget that you have, and making sure, first of all, that the goal that you have has enough budget to accomplish that goal. And then we create the right strategy and tactics that's going to achieve all that with the dollar amount that you have to spend. Looking at other content that you already have, maybe you can repurpose it. Most likely going to have to create new content in a content calendar. Using writers, edit, publishing, and promoting is certainly all part of that cycle. And I'm sure many of you can relate to the slog that, or it feels like a slog of content marketing, because there are a lot of steps. Again, that goes back to long-term though, there is a huge benefit, and we have to keep that in mind, but we've got to do it strategically, or it's not going to yield those results long-term. So one of the things that we do on the front end of that, before we even create any content, is start with keyword research. You say, Miles, why do we do that? What's so important about that? You know, or you've heard that from other people. What's different about your process that makes it different? Because we have the case study. We have gotten SEO results for quite a number of clients. We know how to select topics based on who is searching for those topics, what volume are they searching for, what are the most popular topics, and what aren't too competitive compared to who else you're trying to compete against. Because in SEO, it's a more and more competitive game. Sometimes it's more competitive than others, but the reality is there is competition. And if you're going to spend all that time to rate really great content and set up email workflows and all of that, we need to make sure that we're maximizing those articles as much as possible. Because most organizations that create content, they push it out to their social media, they push it out to their email list, and they get some traffic out of it, and then it comes back down, and it either levels off or goes down to zero because those articles get pushed down. SEO is one of the best ways to continually grow that traffic to those articles over time. So we've got to make sure that we've got a good SEO foundation for these articles. Then we're going to write, edit, publish that structured content to satisfy Google as well as our users. And there's more. Now this is just a quick snapshot of what that looks like. When we narrow all those topics down, we think about what are our prospects' pain points, what are the challenges that they have, and then through keyword research and our experience, we whittle those down to what are the best topics that aren't too competitive for us to rank for in the near future, and then we build a content plan around that. But once we publish that content, there's still more to do. And I don't say that to discourage you, but there's a distribution and promotion beyond our own email list, beyond our own social media, that's critical to making SEO work. One of the ways that we do this is using influencer outreach, using email strategy to reverse engineer other websites that are ranking for those keywords that you're trying to rank your articles for. And we find the top 10 articles for that topic that you're trying to rank for. And we can identify all the other organizations that link to that piece of content. And the reason links are important is because while there are over 200 ranking factors that Google uses to rank a page on a website, quality links, not just quantity, quality links are still very important. So this is one of the ways we can jumpstart an article once it gets published and get that out. And there's a strategic way we can use tools to identify those links from other articles to those top ranking articles, again, that we're trying to rank for as well, and reverse engineer even a few of those links and reach out to those influencers to ask them to look at our article and see why it's different and better and consider to link to it. As we mentioned before, once you get those articles ranking in Google and you start getting traffic, you want to maximize the people that are coming in. So we want 80% of people that come in from SEO to your articles are going to leave and never come back. We want to offer them something of more value, an email opt-in, usually some sort of PDF ebook or white paper as an incentive to give you their email address, because email is currency. We can't just ask people for subscribe to our newsletter and expect people to subscribe. They want something of value beyond the article that you already provided. Then they get on your email list, and then you can nurture them with specific workflows of emails that speak to the pain point that they have related to whatever article that they came in on. The great part about this at the end of this process is then your salespeople have a list of qualified leads that they know in that email automation workflow. There's a certain percentage that open more, click more, interact and engage with those emails more than the rest of the people on that list. Now your salespeople can be that much more efficient and effective at going after those clients and starting a conversation with them now that they know, and they know which emails that they looked at, and they know even more information about their pain points because they can see that information about those prospects. So I want to bring this all back to what we talked about earlier, which is our marketing prehistoric? We all have to, myself included, look at ourselves in the mirror and think, are we doing the same thing over and over, maybe not even realizing it, and expecting different results? We've got to break out of that mindset and consider other things that maybe we've tried before and didn't work, but maybe there's a different way that you could try that exact same thing, or pivot off of that and use that as a stepping stone for some other idea or strategy. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be like the dinosaur and find out that my marketing, my career, or my company has become extinct. So with that, we're going to take some questions from you.
Thanks, Miles. So feel free to continue to type your questions either in the chat or the Q&A functions. I think I captured them all, but I'll scroll back and make sure. The first question that was asked was, what methods can you use to find out a prospect's pain points?
That's a great question. So there are a number of tools that you could use and install on certain pages of your site to ask them for feedback right on those pages. That's one way. You can do a survey for either key clients or even all of your clients, all of your customers. I think it really gives you a snapshot, and you could even segment those up by maybe different departments or different types of service, right? And get you even more finely diced information, so to speak, where you can know each one of those segments and what they care about. I think customer interviews would be another one. Having a third party that's disinterested, they don't have an interest in perhaps swaying the conversation a certain way, but getting some third party to interview some of those key clients and find out what really worked and maybe even some of the things that didn't work, but why they came to you. So there's a number of different ways and to get at that information, and then you've got to use that, right, and incorporate that into your website, into your emails, into your sales materials, and really make sure that that comes across in a unified way across all of those mediums.
Great, thank you. Can you define SEO or search engine optimization for those who might be less familiar with it?
Yeah, my apologies. I should have done that earlier, but SEO literally stands for search engine optimization. That discipline of digital marketing has grown substantially. So in the early days, simply put, we were still doing keyword research back then, but we were trying to jam as many of those keywords into a page as possible. And with that, and remember I mentioned links before and the importance of links, there were link farms out there where you could go buy into these link farms and they would send hundreds or thousands of links to your pages, and you would jam all those keywords in there, right, that you're trying to rank for. And by sheer volume in those two efforts, people were ranking and making all kinds of leads and sales directly from that. Well, Google got wise to all of that, right? And I would say some of the fundamentals haven't changed. It's just the complexity that it takes to do those things. So keyword research is still important. We can't jam them in there or try to spam all those keywords into the page. We have to think of them as our audience would think of them, but still use them. And then on the other side, links are still important, but quality links, individual quality links are so much more important than a bunch of lower quality ones. And it really is, Google has set this up, believe it or not to frustrate you or to not get you to rank, but to get you to decide, are you going to do the things that are going to signal to them and to the users that you care about what they care about? So there's a lot of strategy that goes into what it takes to be successful in SEO and get ranked in Google search and then get people in there. And then even once you get ranked, to stay ranking, because you could rank through a number of methods. And if your content isn't up to snuff or some other metrics is going to make you fall right out of that ranking position, and then maybe even harder in the future to get that back. So that's a long-winded answer to say that to give you some of the understanding what SEO is and what it takes. It's definitely worth doing, but it's not a quick fix or short-term measure. There can be some quick wins, but the real benefit to SEO happens over time and sticking with that strategy over that long-term period.
Thanks, Miles. All right, we're getting quite a few more questions, so this is great. We'll try and get them all in before the end, and if people can stick around, we certainly are able to as well. One of the questions, as you're talking about the longer term strategy, for the long term, if the payback takes 3 years and our world changes much faster than that, how do we commit to a direction that takes 3 years to see a payback? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very valid question. what I have seen over the years, SEO has evolved quite a bit, no doubt, but there are still fundamentals that are there and will be there in the future. How those play out and the specific tactic that we may need to do to support those fundamental strategies will remain. And this all goes back to our audience and what they are looking for, what their pain points are, what topics they're looking at. And in most cases, these content articles that we would be recommending are evergreen content. This is content that's going to be a question our prospects are asking now, 5 years, 10 years, regardless of whatever crises happens. So we're focused on building content because we know the power of SEO. We want those to be centered around things we know people are going to be asking into the future. Will there be new topics that we run across that aren't topics now or aren't pain points now? Yes. But there will be underlying fundamental topics and articles that will remain the same, and we'll just build on those over time.
Great. Thanks, Miles. What do you think about podcasts and how does it fit into the mix?
Yeah. So I think this question speaks to, where do we put our money? Digital marketing is so broad. We can do SEO, we can do articles, we can do video, we can do podcasts, we can do email marketing, right? And I've been there too in the past where it's overwhelming. Like where do we even begin to start? I would say podcasts are a place if that's where your audience is. And you've got to look at what is your budget and what are your priorities? What are your goals that you're trying to accomplish this year, next year? Make sure we always come back to audience, budget, goals, and then align what channels we're going to use, what strategies and tactics around that. Because if we don't do that, we will end up spending a lot of our time spinning our wheels. Not that those things aren't good, but they won't help us achieve those goals as fast. And the idea is if we focus on the most important things first, that gives us more budget later as we become more successful with those strategies and those tactics to reinvest and expand that into other channels and other opportunities. So I just would caution us all to not get too enamored with any particular channel like podcasting. Podcasting is great and it's exploding if that's where your audience is and that's where your prospects are and that's what they care about. That'd be a great place. If it's not, or maybe you need to do X and Y and podcast is Z in terms of your priority and your budget, focus on X and Y and know that Z is on deck for next year or the year after.
Thanks. Okay, I know we're getting down to it. So if we don't answer your question, feel free to type your email address in the chat function and we'll be able to have Miles get back to you with your answers, but I will get through as many as we can. So can you explain any challenges you see when Google changes its the way it measures and ranks things? How do you keep up?
Yeah, another one that I used to drive me crazy because I felt like Google was always changing something and we couldn't keep up. Again, that goes back to some of those fundamentals that I firmly believe, having been in this business for 15 plus years of SEO, there are still fundamentals there. It's gonna take more effort over time to compete at the highest level just because there's more competition. Google is making things more complex because one, they don't want people to game the system because ultimately they want to give the best results to their users. And their dominance in search is totally dependent upon them being the best, giving the best answer every single time. So they have a vested interest in changing whatever they need to change to retain that in the marketplace. And then we have to align our strategies and tactics around that. So I don't worry too much about what's going to change or how Google is changing things, because again, there are fundamental levers that we can pull and things that we need to be consistent with over time. Again, based on our experience and what we've seen in the past, we have a track record and we know those fundamentals are going to be constant and we can rely on those. We might have to pivot a little bit here and there, change this or that, But again, it all comes back to the fundamentals, and those are where we key and center ourselves.
All right. Do you attribute any changes in media consumption to it being a crazy election year? And do you see things changing again after it's over? We hear people are getting email fatigue, so our open rates are declining.
Yeah, I know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting way more political texts than I ever have before. And I'm not on political lists, right? So I'm getting bombarded with those things too. I think in any political election cycle, especially a major one with the presidential, a crowding out effect can happen, right? Everybody's trying to, or more people are trying to speak to people on top of just the normal business and personal communication that happens. So that can happen. Specific to your question about if your open and click-through rates for email are declining, you got to think about several things. Do you need to take a different approach with your messaging and what you're promoting? Maybe you need to do more content and less selling. Or maybe you've got, maybe you need to create different types of content. Maybe, and in the life cycle of an email list too, you got to think about that and the quality of it. I would much rather have a smaller quality list than a larger unengaged one. So you can run some re-engagement campaigns on your email list to try to send 2 or 3 emails and say, hey, we know you haven't opened in a while, and try to re-energize them. And if they're not, move them off your list, because they're, one, costing you money in your email service provider, because most of them you have to pay per month per email. So move them out of your list and clean up that list. Use it as an opportunity to remove some of those people that just, they haven't unsubscribed. And by the way, unsubscribes aren't all bad. People, I know some organizations get really worked up over, well, my unsubscribe rate is so high. Well, maybe you need to change your email strategy, or it may just be an indication that those aren't the people that are qualified. And so that's okay to get them off the list. So there's a lot of ways to think about email marketing and ways to improve it or change it. Over time though, you should at least be consistently experiencing consistent open or click-through rates. If that's declining or not growing, we need to take a look at a number of things and regroup and see what we can improve and change. Oh, and I will add too, maybe that's the quality of leads. So maybe that goes back up to your content, and maybe that content isn't really resonating with those people. So you get them in from content into your email, but maybe those are the wrong prospects. So maybe you have to go further up the funnel and change your content approach so that you get the right people in your email list that you're nurturing.
Thanks, Miles. I'm getting the warning that we're at our time, so I'm guessing we're not allowed to go over. But I do have a couple of other questions from folks. I believe I already have their email addresses, so we'll make sure that Miles gets those answered and sent out to you. So I guess with that, we'll thank you for coming. I don't know if Amazing Events or anyone has anything else they need to say before we exit, so I will mute myself and take it away.
I believe that is the end. Miles, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everyone who attended the presentation today.
Thank you, Jenny.